Alright, so Eliminate dropped a new sample pack.
I just dropped a new sample pack, and it's a vocal sample pack.
And let me tell you, this man cooked, because there's a lot of samples in here, and they're all really sick, so it's almost impossible not to get inspired by the sample pack. And so naturally, I made a song with this vocal right here. So I'm going to show you around the project and kind of show you the ideas, how I use the vocal, sound design, thought process, etc. to hopefully inspire you to make some song of your own, even if you're not using the sample pack. Alright, let's get into it. So let's just start with the intro, which basically just starts like this. It has this ambient texture drone sound that I found on Splice, which I think sounds really cool. And as you can tell, this goes out through the entire song here. And the intro is just it, but a little louder with this limiter that I have here. Let's get right into the intro. We can hear the vocals I used, like I mentioned earlier. These are straight from the Eliminate sample pack. So when I heard this vocal, all I had to hear was that first part in order to get my idea. So I just wanted to repeat this part here, have it keep going, which I guess doesn't sound like all that. So this track has a flangus, and a delay. So the delay is adding much more space, flangus adding like texture, and it's being like filtered in and out throughout the intro. Filters in, slowly filters out, and then back in. Pretty simple there. Originally, I had the idea to make this more like a 4 on the floor cake pattern, which would have worked, and that's where this came from. Well, more like I made this, and then that's where the idea came from. And this also combined with this bass I made. The bass is slightly different than it was before, so it's a little different. Plus claps. Something like that is where the idea started, and it ended up going a little bit differently than I originally planned. Yeah, let's get right into this part here. So this is a pretty simple Vital patch. If you couldn't tell, I'm like all Vital. It's free and it's just such a great synth, especially for like learning about sound design and whatnot. It's really sick. That's what it sounds like alone. You can hear there's like a phaser on there, which there in fact is. That's in Vital right here. Simple saw wave, minus 12 octaves, and then another one minus 36 octaves. It doesn't need to be exact like that because obviously you can play with the octaves in the piano roll. But yeah, they both have the unison all the way up. Very simple. And then we just have a compressor, distortion, reverb, a filter. So the filter is being automated by the envelope here. And we have the flanger, adding some movement to it, adding some texture to it. And then of course we have post-processing. So before, sounds like that. And you know, that's just OTT. We have a little bit of mid boosting, sound goodizer, so another compressor, you know, and then just taking out the lows and then again boosting the mids. Interesting. It's always funny looking through my own songs and then just be like, interesting that I did that and this and those. But yeah, it's pretty simple. Just have a clap and this little thingamajig here. Without any effects, this sounds like this, which still sounds nice to be honest with you. See the difference. It's nice. That's nice. I went with this. You know, songs can go so many different ways. It's all down to personal preference. I could pretend I know what I'm doing with these chords, but I don't exactly. I just knew the key were in and I played around with notes, see what sounds decent to me. You can build me in the comments if these are garbage, but I think it sounds decent, so. Yeah, this is just a preset from Citrus, and I have a lot of post-processing on it, as you saw. So we have this like freeform phase. I don't know exactly how this works. I just kind of clicked around and it sounded decent. Yeah, it makes it a little more watery. Added reverb, space, delay, gives that lasery sound. And then convolution reverb kind of smooths it all out. Adds the biggest difference. And yeah, it's pretty nice. So these are reused a lot throughout the entire song. We also have this just random things here, like little impacts, reverse glass impact, and then just like this big impact. These are all sounds from like Threat Collective. If you know what that is, you can always search it up if you want to. This is not a plug. I just like the sounds. So yeah, and then we have this filter in, kicks come in. This is an interesting sounding bass. We'll get to that in a second. Let's transition into the next section. I personally really like this section. Let's get right into it. So the initial hit, let's start with that because this just starts with the kick and the bass. The kick's every bar and it just keeps going into the clap. very simple, but I think it's very effective in like hitting and then like sucking back into the clap and then hitting back again. I like the vibe there. Just an open hat, and then the clap has that same reverse glass going into it. It's really nice using like little sweeps and other like reverse things just to like sweep into claps or any other parts of your songs. So that's a lot of fun to play around with. Let's go into the sound design of this bass here. It's not too complicated. I swear, like almost every single thing I do on Vital, it's always basic shapes. So you don't have to like think that you need all these crazy waveforms in order to be good at sound design. I've made some pretty sick sounds just with the basic shapes because those are like the fundamentals. And this is super basic, as you can see here. It's just a saw wave with the unison up, pitch down 3 octaves, and then we have compression on here, distortion. Distortion's pretty high with the filter on it, and another filter. So it's no movement either. That's just straight up what it is. Most of it's in the post-processing. Sometimes it sounds like straight from Vital. This is why post-processing is very important, because the difference is quite large. So it starts with the sound equalizer. Sound equalizer just like brings in like high end and it makes it, I like sound equalizer. You can build me about it. Here's Fire, free plugin, very nice distortion. Lots of things you can do here and play around with. So what it looks like is happening here is it making more of the low end, more mono. Okay, so the low end's mono, and the top end is brought in together. So it's not nearly as wide as it was before, but I think that's what I was like going for. I didn't want it to be super wide. I want it to be right here. So it goes from that to that. We have reverb on here. To this sound specifically, it doesn't do too much, but this exact same effects chain is on another bass, which we'll get into in a second. And then, yeah, another sound equalizer on the end of it. So, hey, start with sound equalizer, end with sound equalizer. Simple. Sometimes projects can seem like they're really complicated, but once you break it down, I think it's never too complicated. Same for sound design. It's just something you got to learn and practice. And eventually you get the hang of it and you realize, oh, okay, it's not that complicated. And I'm still learning myself with sound design. I'm not the greatest at all. Just learn like the basic sounds, go from there, experiment. And we also have this sound here, which is also for Vital. Big surprise. Again, I don't know much music theory, but the chords worked. What can I say? I think it sounds alright. This is very simple. Again, saw waves, unison up. This time, one of them, they're higher in octaves. So the one's at the 0 and the one's minus 12. So this is taking up 2 octaves. And even in the piano roll, it's also taking up another 2 octaves. So it's taking up a lot of notes, and that's what makes it sound a bit bigger than it is. We have this filter that's being swept up by this envelope. Very big, and of course the effects is what makes it a bit more special. A little bit of distortion, that's probably doing very little bit, if anything at all. I don't know why it's even there. Delay is the big part of it, just to make it give that space and whatever. And then reverb, of course. It sounds like there's a white noise layered over it, and I actually thought there was. There isn't. I think that comes from like the sound equalizer and this EQ. Yeah, definitely. Sounds much warmer without these effects, but I wanted to take up more of the frequencies, the high end and whatnot. So sound equalizer, I use that a lot, it seems. And then on top of that, adding a tiny bit more high end. Here's that other bass I was talking about. Let's just get the whole shebang right here. So yeah, this is just the fill between the bass, these basses, and add some extra like movement. We have that call and response, which is very important. This being the call, and then the response. That's very important, just aspect in electronic music in general. So sometimes you can just do it without even thinking about it, but still very important. Let's look at this bass. So this bass sounds kind of mid alone, and that's because of all the high frequencies in there, I would say. But in the mix, it sounds pretty good, and I think it has a very strong sub, so I like that. The transient is very prevalent in it. So literally the same exact effect chain as on this bass, they're literally in the same channel. So all I'm gonna show you is just the Vital patch, because we already went through the effects. Ooh, who would have thought a saw wave? Insane. Minus 3 octaves, unison up. Man, that seems like a pretty popular thing of mine. Yeah, compression, distortion. These are being automated though. The filter, the drive, this filter right here as well. And then we also have a flanger on it. Yeah, that's really simple. I thought it was a bit more, I'm not gonna lie to you. Let's hear it without the effects. Yeah. The effects add a lot to that one. And that's why it's cool to experiment with putting different effects chains on different sounds, because they can do like something to one sound, but then they can completely change another sound. So it's good to just have like effects chains and whatnot that you can just experiment with that. All right, so the main part, gotta go into the vocals. So this is straight up from the same sample, and this is the only sample from the sample pack I used, though the rest are sick as well. But yeah, I just use it in many different ways. So here I have it consolidated, this pattern, so I'll go into how I did it before, but it's being sent to another track. So it's originally sent to track 4, then in this section, it's consolidated and sent to track 5, so it gets some extra effects, just an EQ, just some reverb. Okay, that's what's basically happening. Soft clippers just for safe measure. Literally just has some reverb on it. And what's going on, I'm just like chopping it up, putting nice spots where I want it to be, and then like pitching some parts up and down, just add some melodic texture into it. And then we get into this part, super simple. All I did was just add some hats and add a snare where the clap is. So here's just all the percussion. Very simple. Yeah, here's the build up. No spoilers. All right, so here I have the original bass idea. So this is the same melody as we have the plucks earlier in here, but as the bass. And that's just because I had the pattern and was the original idea, but then I switched away from it and I decided to just use it here, and I think it worked pretty well. Interesting, I layered it with this like kind of reggaeton, or not reggaeton, just like a little rim shot snare. I think I found it by searching that up in Splice. It has the reggaeton bounce, I think, so. So yeah, there's that. But for some reason, it just layers really well with the bass. I don't know if that's just me. Kind of experimental, it's kind of random, but I think it works, so I left it there. And I do want to say this now, the song is like not something I would consider putting out yet. You know, there's some minor mixing things I could do, of course. There's always like slight improvements you can do. This is not the final mix. If you guys do ever want me to release this song, then let me know and I'll try to like fix it up as much as I can to my ability. And hey, that'll be cool. And then over here, just the hi-hats come in, claps come in, standard build-up stuff. Now more claps, and then even more claps. I didn't want to bring in too much energy before the drop because the drop's not like a super high energy drop. Kind of is, I guess, but it's just I wanted to more smoothly go into it and then just have the pause here and then go into it. Okay, we have this strings thing here again. It's not really strings, why do I call it strings? I don't know, I call it sping for some reason. I just thought of spring when I put it there. Yeah, it's very minimal again. One of the reasons I can get away with having still a little bit of elements here is just this background thing, adding the space just at all times. It's like kind of a cheat code. The vocals very simple, just the repeat, and then going down and back up with a filter, and then pre-drop everything stops. Reverb tails stay, but like I also lower the texture in the background, and then we have this and a little sweep here. Simple. Small riser, that's the only riser in the song. All right, let's hear it. Again, let's start with the initial hit. Same bass, except I added a little brass stab I found on Splice. It's a very short one, and as you can see, it's like a little delayed. That's just to give space to the kick. I could have sidechained it, right? But if I just sidechanged it, it just did not sound right to me. It just took out too much from the sound itself, so I decided to just move it to the side. Why not? Here's the vocal. So the initial hit is an octave up. It's consolidated, so it doesn't show it there. But yeah, we have that. This kick is not the same kick as before. It's very similar because it's built off the same kick. But essentially what I did is I got this kick, right? And here's a little tip about kicks for EDM particularly, in my experience, right? This is a very nice kick, except you can see here. So you can see the kick here. Let's compare it to what I have now. It looks a little funky. I don't know what the hell this is or what that even means. Sounds fine. The transient is very important because you want it to hit, and the low end is not always going to be what comes through if you're, especially on like headphones or not bass heavy things. So the low end, which is like all this for the most part, I mean obviously some mid, whatever, this low end will come through on big speakers, car speakers, obviously through your headphones as well, but not as much. You just want a good transient though. So as you can see here, this transient's tiny and it sweeps in. I want it to hit right there. So I added a transient from, as you can see, A5 Donation sample pack. Let me go into it. So this is that kick. This kick has a very nice transient, but the rest is not quite what I wanted. So I just wanted to merge that kick with the transient of this kick. So all I did was just like go down real tiny and then literally just stack them on top of each other, and that works perfectly fine. I might have done this or something. It's possible either way. This is perfectly fine. You might think there might be clicking, but that's fine because it's the transient. So there's going to be clicking. It's going to be like a click anyways. When it mixed, whatever happened there happened, but it sounds fine now. And I think the transient hits much better through the mix. Sometimes even though you have sidechain and the volume's going completely down on everything else but the kick, it just won't cut through even if you have all the sidechain. Speaking of the kick, might as well get into the drums. There's quite a bit of hi-hats here. These hi-hats I found from some random free dubstep drum kit. Most of it was garbage, but there was like some gems in there, and I like this hi-hat a lot, so I use it a lot. It feels a lot of that high end. We have some ghost snares right here just to add some character, and yeah, it's pretty simple. Let's get into the actual sounds used in here. So obviously we have this in the background, of course. We have this hit, and right here we have that bass I had earlier. It had a nice sub, and I wanted to just lay it over this sound here. This sound actually came up on accident. I was not looking for a stab that sounds quite like this, but it worked out. A lot of my sound design comes on, I'm sure you guys can relate to this, like it's kind of, I have a point in what I'm doing, but it's also very experimental and very random. So there's a lot of things you just like come up with without even wanting to come up with it. I was looking for something else. I forgot what I was looking for, but then I ended up having this stab sound and I did not realize how perfectly it fit. It sounds really good with the bass as well. Yeah, let's go into how I made this. So yeah, just saw waves, different octaves, different levels, compression, distortion, filter. This seems like a common theme as well in a lot of my sounds. But yeah, this is all being automated here by the envelope. We have white noise, add to the top. Again, I found it like kind of on accident. What wasn't on accident was this right here. That was a little underwhelming. Just a low sub plus this. So on this part here, we have this is straightforward, just chopped up the vocals. And yeah, this is super simple, as you can probably imagine. Just a sine wave with this envelope here on the distortion, 2 octaves down. Sound goodizer. Wow, insane. And then reverb. Cursed, but it works. You just gotta make sure you put the low cut on it. This adds just a little space to the bass. You gotta experiment. Sometimes reverb will work on your basses. Now, you don't use it on every bass you have, and make sure to low cut it because you don't want that like muddy bass. Unless you do, then you're weird. This little spot here didn't have enough energy or enough space filled, so I added this little thingamajig here. Basic shapes. Oh my god, I'm so original. Insane how much you can make with just a basic shape saw wave, as you can see here. We have this LFO right here, just making it it sounds like almost a bird chirping. We have the flanger here, chorus, distortion, compressor. Over here we have a EQ taking all the lows, convolution, reverb. This is in the sound design section, so these are not like to add a bunch of space, but they just add to the sound character, as you can see here. That sounds good too, but I like that. So it's doing its job here, but it's not doing enough of a job apparently. So I added this M tremolo, just because I wanted to get that stereo shaper, making it stereo instead of mono. Well, it wasn't mono, but making it more wide. And then reverb, can't go wrong with reverb. I just think that adds like a cool character to it. So let's just hear it. You can hear it, it's very subtle in the background. This is a little cool thing that I use throughout this song. It's a cool bass. It's just like to put in like little gaps, and that's exactly what I did. Little gap right here. Normally you would stop like all sounds, then just put like, and it just like perfectly transitions to the next part. Add in some swagger, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah, this kind of just a repeat. Over here we add back that Saw wave, just make it bigger as we progress into the song. I also add the clap along with the snare. But yeah, that's about it, to be honest with you. One thing I do want to note, I noticed that having these chords here now affects how you hear like the notes in these vocals. I don't know if it's just me, it's hard to explain. Now I like almost hear this vocal in the context of the chord. It just now has so much more emotion. It's so interesting the way like the sounds and the notes can like combine with each other. If only I knew what I was talking about. That would be nice. This last section here, I just kind of added it. This is just like to put in what my original idea was that I was talking about, where it's just this. Except I had these drums, so it wasn't like the 4 on the floor, which I originally envisioned for this song. But you know, sometimes you just gotta go with the flow, and that's where it took me. And I put this at the end of the drop, so yeah, you could call it weird, being 24 bars instead of 16. Personally, I don't care. 2 hits every 2 bars. This coming in. Vocal just repeating, and then the same drums. All right, let's get into this part. So this is like almost all just copy paste. There's just like this little part right here, which is just simple. I use a different part of the vocal, so you can hear that there. Just add more character, just add like a transition to the next part. Put the bass there, verse kick into it. Put one that's an octave lower. Little like empty space here as we transition. Back into that same section that we had before. Sounds so cool. And then back into the buildup as well. Let's get to that. And I'm just letting it play through as I talk about it. This one's a little different. We have a vocal being an octave down, and we filter it a little lower as well. Now it's getting a bit more intense, you know. This is where the difference is, and you're gonna hear the difference in the drop.